Well, it finally happened. Jorge Polanco just signed with the New York Mets for 2 years and $40 million. And you want to know who's not celebrating right now? The Toronto Blue Jays, because they just watched a perfect solution to their middle infield problems walk right past them and sign with a division rival. And before anyone says they weren't even in the running, let me tell you something. They should have been. They absolutely should have been. And the fact that they weren't tells you everything you need to know about how this front office operates, or more accurately, how it fails to operate when opportunities present themselves. Let's start with the obvious. The Blue Jays have a Bo Bichette problem. He's a free agent. The negotiations aren't going well. There's a very real chance he walks. And if he walks, what's the plan? What's the backup? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like the Blue Jays don't have one. They're pursuing Ketel Marte, who would cost them a fortune in prospects. They're linked to international players who might not even work out. They're throwing darts at a board and hoping something sticks. Meanwhile, Jorge Polanco, a proven major league hitter who just came off a career year, was sitting right there. Available, affordable, ready to contribute immediately, and they did nothing. Jorge Polanco just had a 134 OPS plus season. That's 34% better than league average. He hit 26 home runs. He posted an 821 OPS. He played in 138 games, which for a guy with his injury history is basically a miracle. And, oh yeah, he absolutely murdered the Blue Jays in the ALCS. Game 1, he hit a go-ahead single off Kevin Gausman. Game 2, he launched a 3-run home run off Trey Yesovich. He was one of the Mariners' best hitters in that series. The Blue Jays saw firsthand what Jorge Polanco can do when he's healthy and locked in. They had a front row seat to his production, and they still let him walk to the Mets without even making a serious push. That's not just a missed opportunity. That's organizational malpractice. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Polanco only works if Bichette leaves. There's no room for him if Bo comes back. And on the surface, that makes sense. But here's the problem with that logic. It assumes the Blue Jays know what's happening with Bichette. It assumes they have a clear plan. It assumes they're operating from a position of strength, and none of that is true. The Bichette situation is messy, it's unclear, it's dragging on. And while they're waiting to figure that out, the market is moving. Players are signing, teams are improving, and the Blue Jays are standing still, paralyzed by indecision. Meanwhile, the Mets, who just lost Pete Alonso, acted decisively. They identified a need, they found a solution, they pulled the trigger. That's how you run a baseball team, not whatever the Blue Jays are doing. Let's talk about the contract, because this is where it gets really frustrating. 2 years, $40 million, that's $20 million per year. And yeah, that's more than most people predicted. Spotrac had him at 3 years and $43 million. ESPN's Kylie McDaniel said 2 years and $26 million. MLB Trade Rumors projected 3 years and $42 million. So the Mets paid a premium. They overpaid by a few million per year. And you know what? Good for them, because they got a switch-hitting infielder with pop who can play multiple positions and just had the best season of his career. Meanwhile, the Blue Jays are going to spend that same money, probably more, on players who don't fit as well or who come with significantly more risk. That's the part that makes no sense. They're willing to overpay for the wrong guys, but unwilling to compete for the right ones. And here's what really burns me up about this. The Blue Jays supposedly had interest in Polanco last winter. They reportedly met with him before he signed with the Mariners. They liked him then. They recognized his value. They understood what he could bring to the lineup. So what changed? Why didn't they pursue him again this year when he just proved everything they liked about him the first time was accurate? The answer is simple. They got distracted. They started chasing bigger names. They convinced themselves they needed to make splash moves instead of smart moves. And in the process, they let a perfect fit slip through their fingers. Let me paint you a picture of what the Blue Jays infield could have looked like with Jorge Polanco. If Bichette leaves, you move Andres Gimenez to shortstop. He's a Gold Glove caliber defender. He can handle it. You put Polanco at second base where he's comfortable and where he played most of last season. You've got Ernie Clement at third, who's solid defensively and provides depth. That's an infield that can actually play defense. That's an infield with versatility. That's an infield that doesn't have massive holes. And you got there by spending $40 million over 2 years instead of trading away your entire farm system for Ketel Marte or gambling on an unproven international player. But instead, the Blue Jays are going to do what they always do. They're going to overthink it. They're going to chase the sexy option, and they're going to end up worse off. The timing makes this even more painful. Polanco signed on December 13th. We're in the middle of the offseason. The Blue Jays had every opportunity to be aggressive. They had the payroll space. They had the need. They had the justification, and they sat on their hands. Meanwhile, the Red Sox are making moves. The Orioles are making moves. The Yankees always make moves. And the Blue Jays are watching their division rivals get better while they tread water. That's not how you compete in the AL East. That's not how you build on a World Series appearance. That's how you waste a golden opportunity and fall back into mediocrity. Let's talk about what Polanco actually brings, because this matters. He's a switch hitter. Do you understand how valuable that is? The Blue Jays love having switch hitters in their lineup. It gives them flexibility. It creates matchup advantages. It makes late game management easier. Polanco gives you that from both sides of the plate. His strikeout rate is excellent, 83rd percentile. That means he makes contact. He puts the ball in play. He doesn't kill rallies with empty at-bats. His exit velocity and hard hit rates were career highs in 2025. His power surged. His batting average climbed. Everything was clicking. And the Mets recognized that. They saw the upward trajectory. They bet on him continuing that production. The Blue Jays saw the same thing and said, no thanks, we'll pass. Now let's address the elephant in the room, health. Polanco has had injury issues. From 2022 to 2024, he averaged just 101 games per season. Knee problems, leg issues, various ailments that kept him off the field. And yes, that's concerning. That's legitimate risk. But you know what? He played 138 games in 2025. He stayed healthy when it mattered most. The Mariners managed his workload by splitting time between second base and DH, and it worked perfectly. The Blue Jays could have done the exact same thing. They could have built in rest days. They could have used him at DH occasionally. They could have protected their investment while maximizing his production. Instead, they're going to gamble on someone with even more risk or pay more for someone with less upside. That's not smart roster construction. That's fear disguised as prudence. Here's another thing nobody wants to talk about. Polanco wanted to stay in Seattle. According to multiple reports, Seattle was his number one choice. He was very torn about leaving. But the Mets offered him significantly more money, and he couldn't turn it down. Think about that. A player who loved where he was playing, who had just helped his team reach the ALCS, who wanted to run it back, still left because the money was that much better. What does that tell you about the Mets' offer? It tells you they went all in. They made it impossible to say no. The Mariners reportedly wouldn't budge on giving him a third year. They wouldn't go above a certain dollar amount. And Polanco walked. Now imagine if the Blue Jays had been in those negotiations. Imagine if they had offered him 2 years and $42 million or 3 years and $45 million. Do you think Polanco turns that down to play for the Mets? Maybe he still does, but at least you tried. At least you made a real offer. At least you competed. The worst part about all of this is that we've seen this movie before. The Blue Jays identify a need. They scout players. They do their homework. And then when it's time to actually pull the trigger, they hesitate, they overthink, they convince themselves there's a better option just around the corner. And by the time they realize there isn't, the good players are already gone. It happened with starting pitching. It happened with bullpen arms. It's happening again with middle infield. This is a pattern. This is organizational culture. And until something fundamentally changes in how they approach roster building, it's going to keep happening. You want to know what really grinds my gears? The Blue Jays are about to spend significant money this offseason. They're going to make moves. They're going to sign players. But those players are going to be riskier, less proven, or more expensive than Jorge Polanco. They're going to trade prospects for Ketel Marte when they could have just signed Polanco for cash. They're going to take flyers on international players who might not adjust to MLB when Polanco is already a known commodity. They're going to overpay for someone in late January when all the good options are gone and they're desperate. Mark my words. This is exactly how it's going to play out. And when it does, everyone's going to act surprised. Everyone's going to wonder how it went wrong. But the answer's right here, right now. They had their chance with Jorge Polanco and they blew it. Let's be clear about something. This isn't about whether Polanco is going to be an all-star. This isn't about whether he's going to carry the Mets to a championship. This is about the Blue Jays failing to identify and capitalize on a perfect fit when it was staring them in the face. Polanco checked every box: switch hitter, power, contact ability, positional flexibility, postseason experience, familiarity with the AL East, affordable price tag, short-term commitment. What more do you need? What other criteria are you looking for? Because from where I'm sitting, he was exactly what they needed at exactly the right time for exactly the right price. And they let him walk to a team they're supposed to be competing against. Here's my prediction. The Mets are going to get 2 very productive years out of Jorge Polanco. He's going to hit close to his 2025 numbers. He's going to stay reasonably healthy because they'll manage his workload intelligently. He's going to provide veteran leadership and clutch hitting, and Blue Jays fans are going to watch him do all of that while wondering why their team didn't even try to sign him. Meanwhile, Toronto is going to end up with someone who doesn't fit as well, costs more, or comes with significantly more risk. And we're all going to sit here next December talking about how the Blue Jays missed their window, how they wasted their World Series appearance, how they failed to capitalize on momentum. And this moment right here, this Jorge Polanco signing with the Mets, this is going to be Exhibit A in that conversation. This is where it started to fall apart. This is the missed opportunity that defined their offseason. And the tragedy is that it was completely avoidable. They just had to act. They just had to compete. They just had to try. But they didn't, and now they're going to pay the price for that failure for years to come.